But these are one step removed from private sector folks who, in general, just needed their lawyers to look at questions, and we weren't prepared to have an open, unstructured interview process with fixed questions. Sort of defeats the method. So that was the process, and this is the initial report. If you're interested, I'm happy to send it to you. It's in draft format for about another week. We'll probably extend the draft process a little bit. We were hoping to have it out on Monday or Tuesday, with this being the final meeting for people to come and give us a chance to. Okay. But here's what we came up with. We made 4 initial assumptions about Homeland Security in Colorado. And this may be what I think provokes this audience's interest, and then we'll talk about 2 chapters and how they played out. And the 4 assumptions are that the money train is over. Assumption number 1 is that Homeland Security and civil defense and emergency management, and it didn't really matter what you called it, if you could put that label on it at the state, local, federal, tribal level, there was money. Academia dipped into this pool as much as anybody else. In fact, in the first 3 years after 9/11, colleges picked up $6.2 billion to start Homeland Security programs. I know for a fact that when they did the audit 3 years later, most of that money could not be particularly well accounted for. It went to individual projects, but before I sound like I'm beating up on professionals in emergency management, academia did the same thing. There was this enormous pot of money, and anybody who wanted to tap into it, who could come up with a good idea, got funded. This has led to a very interesting relationship between your local and state level emergency management folks and Homeland Security folks, because they're grant dependent. So they have become grant dependent every time they had a good new idea, and they had many. They then put in for a grant, and they got grant funding. Now, then there is the recession. I'm not sure I'm prepared as an economic history perspective to call it the Great Recession, but it's often called the Great Recession. And we're in a new administration whose primary focus is the budget. And the moral of the story is that doesn't happen anymore. And so the state of Colorado, like every state in the union, and the municipalities of Colorado, like every municipality in the country, is suddenly confronted with not only, I've had a good idea, I've now figured out what I need to do for this, that, and the other, and there's no money, but they're having grants expire. And so they're in the process of trying to figure out what it is they want to keep and what it is they don't want to keep. So, for example, they have discovered, like I said in Colorado, this will be very interesting to see how it plays out, most states have discovered, post-Katrina, that their recovery plans are the least well-developed of anything that they've got. And they've discovered this at just about the point there is no further money to initiate brand new programs. So they have, what they're doing is things like trying to figure out how to get recovery into their existing readiness training. So they're changing the names of programs from readiness training to readiness and recovery training. And they're trying to figure out, because the evolution of this stuff has really taken place in really only a 12-year period. And the revolution, any evolution of anything in 12 years is not complete. So number 1 is there's now a money problem. Not that there's no money, but that we're not able to just simply facilitate new ideas. We have to now prioritize. Hence their desire to have us, which we try to do, help give them a sense of how to prioritize. And you'll see in the executive summary, if that's what you have time to read, you'll see in the executive summary, and I'll go hand a few more of these out, that we've tried very hard to give them short, concise lists of exactly that. Good morning. Thank you for coming. I have exactly 2 of these left, so that works out beautifully. Oh, I didn't send that one to you, so you could have lost it. So the moral of the story is, that's number 1, that the easy money is over, and now Homeland Security folks have to make policy choices, and they would like to choose the things they've learned, but they're more or less being funded by grants 3, 4, 5 years out that they're trying to keep. The place where this hits the most is in the trade-off between how much counterterrorism to do vis-a-vis how much traditional emergency management to do. I will tell you, and I'm not, we can state opinions later, the state of Colorado has decided for its next budget cycle that it has to prioritize the kayak center, the counterterrorism center. Because if it doesn't prioritize it, it might go unfunded and then they would lose the capability. Which is going to be an interesting political discussion at the legislature level, since I'm pretty sure the vast majority of legislators have not been attacked by a terrorist recently, but have watched their districts be run over by water. So it may be very interesting, because when that initial decision was made by the governor, it was pre-flood. And he told the folks involved that we would be trying to make sure we had full funding for the kayak, because we can then have other years to fight for money for other things. We're about to spend an enormous amount of Colorado money, state money, federal money on flood recovery. It'll be interesting to see what that does. Now, I should say, we should say, that assumption number 2 we made, or finding number 2, if you will, or not necessarily assumptions, we think we can back them up, was that we don't think Homeland Security in Colorado is truly terrorist-based either. So we're not surprised, and when we wrote the report pre-flood, we would have recommended that that actually not be the way to go. Now, while we certainly understand the threat of terrorism, I teach terrorism and taught it for the Air Force for a number of years. I've worked terrorism issues. I certainly am well aware that's a serious threat. In Colorado, it's not a particular threat, if that distinction makes sense. We don't think Colorado's not New York. Colorado's not a coastal city. Colorado does not have a significant military institution that is known. Now, Colorado has 2 very important military institutions. Neither one of them is well known overseas, which is how military institutions typically get targeted. They're either local to large populations, potential terrorists, or they're well known. Neither of Colorado's fits that description, and one of them is very well hardened. The other one is the Air Force Academy, which is an interesting discussion in its own right. So we made the decision, which went over well with about 3/4 of the emergency management folks, that we don't see terrorism as the primary driver of emergency management in Colorado. Could it happen? Yes. Is it dangerous? Yes.